Welcome to episode 43 of In Touch with iOS, a podcast that talks about iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and related technologies, plus tips, apps, and gear. I am your host, Dave Ginsburg, and my guest this week is Mr. Mike LaPlante, the former podcaster I used to work with. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing very good, David, and yourself?
Doing great. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm real excited to dig in and talk a little bit of iOS stuff with you. We had been meaning to do this for a long time, and then things changed with you. And
yes, that's for sure.
It definitely went a little different than what you had been doing. So we could elaborate later if you choose.
Okay.
But I wanted to touch base and let everybody know what we're going to talk about today. We've got a lot of news stories. There's a lot of releases that just happened as we record this. With iOS and with the watch and everything else, and threw out a couple topics here. I thought we had some good stuff, and I always I'm kind of making this kind of the normal thing I do with first-time guests, and you are a first-time guest on my show, and I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to ask you what you do with your iOS devices. I asked that last week of my guests, and we're going to keep doing this. And then another topic, music and iOS. You're a musician. I thought it'd be a great discussion we could have about music services with music in general and how it affects iOS. And we'll dig a little deeper with a couple other topics and then some apps and gear, and then we'll just do our thing here. So first story was which was not surprising is iOS 12.1.1 came out. We have a link in the show notes on 9 to 5 Mac and some of the different updates that came out, 12.1.1 for iOS, and then tvOS, and of course Mac, and then the HomePod even actually was updated too. Does anything catch your eye with this story, I guess we could call it?
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, I never expected it to come out today. I thought it was going to be next week myself.
Same here.
And it's interesting that they're actually in these I consider these like security updates. That's the
right
point update, and this is 12.1.1, and this is the 0.1 at the end of that. And normally you don't see too many features, but sometimes they promise features that didn't make it into the first release, or even in the update of 12.1. And that sometimes they'll throw those in there. It's kind of like fulfilling a promise, I guess. I don't know that any of these fall into that category or not. The first one that did catch my eye was the fact of notification preview. Did they not have that on the 10R? The people who had the 10Rs?
Yes, I guess not. I mean, I'm not a 10R user, and but I guess they did not have that. So it's back with the especially with the haptic touch feature to expand the notifications, which you couldn't do on the 10R because that device was a little different. And there must have been some reason why they cut some costs for the 10R versus the 10S.
And what are you rocking these days, David?
I have the 10S Max, and it's quite an awesome phone, and I've been very happy with it. I like the larger size. I was used to the larger size from the iPhone 8 and from the iPhone 7 Plus and 8 Plus. That's rocking pretty well for me.
Cool.
Other things they did is I guess they're upgrading cosmetics with things like the Apple Watch icon app, and I love when I read through some of these release notes. Like there's a pretty little icon here now.
It's a lot of information can be withheld in those little icons.
This is true. So, one of the things that did stand out, and I did talk about this on the last episode, is about the eSIM, and Google Fi had decided to open up their service to the iPhone, and we talked about it at great length last week. But now this is official dual SIM, where I would bring that into an actual topic coming up here in a little bit.
Okay.
For additional carriers now available, you can use the dual SIM, and we'll talk about that with the eSIM and the regular SIM here. So, one of the complaints, and I'm glad they did this, is the FaceTime call. You can it's a one-tap flip between the rear and the front facing cameras, which I guess we didn't have that before.
Well, it was just they just kind of redid the whole interface in the iOS 12, and then it was, I think, 3 taps for you to get to the flip your camera button, which is a little bit much. And so, I'm glad they put that front and center.
Yeah, me too. Real-time text was an interesting feature. I might go tap into that in a later episode here, which allows during Wi-Fi calling on an iPad or an iPad Touch, where you actually can be real-time texting somebody while you're talking to them between devices. So we'll explore that a little further. And lots of other things that, of course, the fixes, bugs, all that fun stuff. They did that. The HomePod got its update as well. I just updated it a little while ago, and there really wasn't a huge thing other than it was support to the mainland China and Hong Kong, and the LED illuminates during group FaceTime calls. Oh boy, exciting! It was a good update, and then that was the day before. And then, of course, today the Apple Watch 5.1.2 came out today, and I just updated it. And the big exciting thing about that is the ECG app. It allows you to be able to do atrial fibrillation and sinus rhythm and measure your heart rate at an even more deeper level. It's pretty slick. Do you have an Apple Watch?
I do, but I don't have the current generation of Apple Watch.
Right, you got this Series 3. We'll talk about what you have in a minute here.
Okay.
This was pretty exciting. I know a lot of people were waiting for it, and a lot of demos out there, a lot of videos. We'll have links in the show notes of what caught our eyes as far as what it does. And basically, what you do is you open up the app and you hold your finger on the crown for 30 seconds, and it gives you a nice reading of what your heart rate is, and if there's anything irregular in your heart rhythm. And I'm happy to say I was fine. So
I'm happy you're healthy over there, Dave.
Yes. So that was another one that they talked about. And other one that kind of caught my eye was the fact that Apple had not been selling the USB-C power adapter for the iPad Pro, which was kind of surprising. But now they have started beginning to sell the 18-watt USB-C power adapter separately for both for the iPhones and iPads. I don't know if you necessarily. Well, I guess you could use it because if you have a USB-C to Lightning cable,
which only Apple makes those.
For now, they're going to be making. I think they're going to be making pretty soon. But you can use this charger to charge your iPhone too if you have that cable, which of course I have. You know me, I have to have everything.
Gotta have it.
Well, it was important because I wanted to be able to charge my iPhone with my iPad, and that was the whole reason of being able to do that, because you can charge your your iPhone with your iPad Pro 11-inch using the USB-C. So that was another news story. And you threw out this story. I'll let you kind of lead with it. This was on CNET. And I did not go look real super close to it. But, Apple may be working on a new Beddit sleep monitor. That is awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, this is one aspect of Apple's health strategy. Mm-hmm. And when they first bought the company, I thought this is great, but I was really interested in to see if they were going to use the same kind of technology that Beddit had initially put in their product, and that is some kind of sensor, like a ribbon that goes between your sheets and your mattress, and it's basically sensors that track your emotion and your stillness, I guess you'd say, and there's other aspects of the program that allowed them to track your sleeping in a comprehensive way, which sleep is really important. And as we get older, even from teenager to adulthood into later adulthood, this type of information can be really important to figure out if you're getting enough sleep, for one thing, and what kind of quality of sleep. You can be in bed for 10 hours and only have 5 hours of decent sleep.
Right.
And you may not even know it. You may have like some kind of sleep disorder, like apnea or something like that, that prevents you from getting a good night's sleep. So what we found out is that Apple put in a patent, which of course they put in thousands of patents.
They do.
And it doesn't necessarily mean anything's going to be happening with it, but this is a pretty focused technology that is centered around a company that they bought. So this isn't so much pie in the sky that we're going to cover all our bases. They do a lot of those kind of patent filings, but this is more of we bought this company and now we're rejigging it to make it Apple-like or to fit into our ecosystem with everything else that we're doing health-based. So it's not too heavy on specifics, but the fact that we have actually heard something from Apple on their sleep monitoring strategy, it's a good sign that probably something is going to be coming out in the near future to round out that aspect of their whole health thing that they're really working hard at.
No, yeah, and that just keeps going and going. I mean, even beyond health, all the other health items they're doing. I know the big request was obviously being able to measure blood sugar levels for diabetics. I know that's got to be something that's on the radar. That's closer than it is farther away. So yeah,
sure.
I love Apple is doing such a great job with this stuff, and it just makes the Apple Watch even more and more valuable. It really does.
Really, yeah.
For what it measures.
And I always like to figure out how certain things that Apple does, how does it figure into the bigger strategy from going to a solely a hardware company into something more service based.
Right. So it just keeps going, and then Apple will keep going. No looking at the stock market though, because the stock market's been dropping like a rock lately, and I'm sitting tight with Apple. I'm not going to sell off like a lot of these people are, but I think
everything's being affected though, right?
I mean, the whole market is, and this is the type of stuff that should just hold Apple steady for what they're keeping their focus on. So I'm pretty excited about that. Hopefully nobody heard that crazy noise when I opened up the CNET. I don't know if you heard that, but
I didn't hear it. I didn't hear a thing, David.
Okay, good, because I don't like CNET. They have all those pop-over videos that drive me crazy, but I think it was okay. So
okay.
Anyway, so like I said, let's move on to our topics and tips here. And the first thing I like to talk about is with my guests, and especially ones who are their first time here on the show, is what you use your iOS is for, and what do you have? And so tell us what you asked me. I have the iPhone 10s Max, which everybody knows. I keep repeating myself every week. But what do you have as far as your devices?
I still have my iPhone 10.
Okay, good.
Yeah, for myself, I always outright buy the device that I'm using, and that kind of keeps things open for me as far as going with whatever carrier I want to go with.
Sure.
And in Canadian dollars, my iPhone 10 last year cost me over $2,000.
Right. Yeah.
So
imagine what this 10s Max is up there.
Oh yeah, that's a couple $100 more than $2,000. But anyway, so for me to recoup enough money for me to justify upgrading right away, I'm kind of glad there was nothing super compelling about the iPhone 10s to make me have to have it. You know what I mean?
No, there wasn't. I had the 10, and I just I'm the upgrader. Call me crazy.
No, I call that's exactly. This is the very first year ever since not the very first iPhone, because that wasn't available in Canada, but since the 3GS, I've gotten a new phone every year. So I was somewhat saddened that I couldn't do my regular upgrade, but at the same time,
you're smart.
Well, it's Apple. The way that they're pricing within the last, I kind of analyze, from the 7 to the 10 to the 10s cycle, the rate of increase of the price of the iPhone, specifically the iPhone, it's been pretty insane if you ask me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I agree. It's just every year it's been interesting, and there's been discussion when I talked about it last week. They're saying the iPhone 10R is selling great, but then you're seeing all these new deals now that they're selling they're offering trade-ins for up to $300 on some of the older phones when you trade it in. I mean, when I traded in my iPhone 10, it was I got over $500 for it. So, but that still doesn't recoup what you paid for originally for it. So, but of course, I'm on the iPhone upgrade program every year, so I'm basically renting the phone. So after a year, I can just turn it in and just get the new one. So. Do you have an iPad, I assume?
I have the second generation iPad Pro.
Okay, great.
12-inch or 11.9-inch, whatever.
Oh, 12.9 inch. Okay.
12.9. Thank you very much. I was thinking that doesn't sound right.
That's right. And you're happy with that device? Because I did look at the I talked about that before. I did look at the 12.9 inch for the new generation, and I was tempted. But you're liking this big one?
I like the size of it for sure. For one thing, I don't own a television set.
Ah, that's right.
So it is the device that my wife and I tend to consume most of our video content on.
Sure. Okay.
So there's that. Plus, for me, I definitely use it much like a computer when I'm away. I take it places, like I'm going on a trip to Toronto, and I like to bring that with me along with a Bluetooth keyboard. And
sure.
And it helps me get the ideas down that I want to get. For the most part, anyway. No video editing, or I wouldn't even run Photoshop on it. The iOS version of the Adobe stuff.
The new version might be interesting. We'll see how when they finally release that the full out version of it.
It will be interesting. Just recently, I started using Photoshop again on my Mac.
Oh, okay.
I tried Affinity Photo forever because it has a lot of similarities to Photoshop, a lot of the same keyboard shortcuts, but the workflow that you get used to on Photoshop, and I've been using Photoshop for since the 2.5 version.
Sure, long time.
Yeah, and I got certified in it, and I used it on a regular basis for some consulting work I did. So I'm really, really familiar. I have, it's just deep down way that you use a specific program. So going to Affinity, I thought, for one, it's $50. How can you go wrong? Well, you can go wrong because you can't get stuff done at the same pace that you would normally.
Right.
So I forked over whatever it is, the $20 a month that it costs to rent Adobe Photoshop. And I have to admit, I'm digging it because doing what I'm going to be doing in the future, which we'll maybe talk about at the end of the show, I really need to have some graphics happening. And then I just don't have time to, monkey around on something that I'm not really all that familiar with.
That's true. Yeah, and especially your endeavor, we'll talk about later, is you want to use something that you're already familiar with and comfortable with. So
right, but I hate
makes sense.
I hate renting software though.
That I was wondering. You read my mind. I was going to ask you that question because that's always the toughest discussion with anybody when it comes to Creative Cloud is you have to rent the gosh darn software for any time you want to use it. So, but people do it. That's how Adobe is, unfortunately. So
one thing I guess I don't mind about it is the fact that I know there's going to be lulls in my need for it. So as I see I'm not going to be using it, well, then you can just cut it off, right?
That's true.
It's not like you're signed up for a contract of any kind. You just stop paying the money and you say, I'm done using it. And then, you move on and use what you've created to the best of your ability, I guess. So, there's pros and cons to all that, I guess.
Yeah. And like I said, that sounds like you're really enjoying the 12.9, and that's awesome that you got more power than me to not have a TV. So, but 12.9 inch, that's a great iPad to watch anything on it, really.
Well, there's the whole sports thing, right? Obviously, if you're watching a football game or a hockey game, which are the two sports that I'm into, it doesn't have quite the same immersion as let's say a 50, 60 inch television set. But
that's true.
How big is your TV, Dave?
Well, I got a 65 inch down in my basement here, and I got a 32 inch sitting next to my right here as I talk to you in my podcast studio, and we got a 55 inch in my bedroom. So, that's like I said, I don't know how I could not have a TV. I'm crazy. Well, the 55 inch in the bedroom is a little bit of overkill, but we just kind of rotated that one up to the bedroom when I upgraded to the 65 inch curved Samsung that I have downstairs. So, but yeah, it's tough. It's tough. So we,
Okay.
Well, we have service through our cable provider Comcast, and they just offered us. They just offered me, and I took it. Is the gigabit internet speed. So I'm very excited about that. In fact, there's already problems with it because it's not fast enough for me. I'm getting 500 megabit speeds, and for most people that's pretty awesome. But hey, I'm paying for it. I want my 1 gigabit. Gosh darn it. Well,
how are they doing that though, David?
As far as the gigabit, the pipes that are here in the Chicago area have increased. I mean, they've done a much better job of getting it increased in the area. So
So it's fiber though?
they have fiber available, but this is still over the coax, and they still can transmit the speeds over the coax from what they told me. I mean, they wouldn't have offered me the service otherwise. So I'll find out when our tech comes on this Saturday to turn around and say, no, well, you can't do this because okay, well, then you better give me my money back. So,
yeah, you want to get what you're paying for, right? Obviously, if there's
exactly.
people, if you're paying for gigabit, you obviously know what gigabit means, and I really want it.
Exactly. Well, that's a whole other topic of off that, but you also have an Apple Watch, right? You said you have the Series 3?
I have the Series 3, and okay. I'm definitely interested in getting the Series 4 just for the hard stuff alone.
Right.
Myself, I suffer from PACs. If anybody knows what those are, it's a regular heartbeat. Sometimes they're worse than other times, depending on, I have no idea. I wish I knew. It could be the weather, could be the amount of exposure I am to the sun or my diet. I have no idea what it really causes it, and they don't really know either.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice for me to keep an eye on that situation using the watch alone. I mean, that seems really cool. However, the Apple Watch 4 Series 4s they sell in Canada are not
expensive.
No, they're not approved.
Oh, they're approved. That's right.
So it's a health thing. So it's got to go through some bureaucratic health stuff. The Ministry of Health over here has to approve it, and it's got to get tested and all that kind of stuff. But I live very close to an Apple store in Detroit.
You could sneak across the border and.
Yes, there's no sneaking. There's no sneaking. It's sneaking the watch back.
Sneaking the watch back with you. Oh, sir, I've had it on my wrist. I mean, it's okay.
So yeah, I plan on going over there and grabbing one. Probably within the next in less than a month for sure.
Good deal. Yeah, no, you definitely be a candidate for that, especially if you want to be monitoring your heart rate even more. So
yeah.
So of course you don't have any Apple TVs because you don't have TVs to plug into them. So
no, I don't.
Did you get the HomePod at all?
I do have one HomePod.
So do I.
Like I told you, I guess I was talking to you before the show that we did a reno in the place that is now my studio, I guess. Yeah. And I used to have Sonos in here.
Oh yes.
And I could not get the bridge software to run properly. To listen to other, just to AirPlay it, the workaround that this got some developer who does not pay attention to his customers, because I couldn't get it to work, and he gave me no support. I asked for a refund, never got a reply back, and he uses a separate company for the payment thing. I forget who it was, and they said they couldn't get a refund, give me a refund until he authorizes it or something. And this person, actually, I don't even know if it's a he or not, but whoever it is who wrote that software. So I'm really disappointed that I can't use my Sonos that I have, which is not compatible with the AirPlay 2.
Right.
So I'm thinking I'm going to sell them and get another HomePod. Okay. Even though this one HomePod that I have does fill this room nicely, I might put the other one like just in another room on the other side of the house or something. It's amazing how these HomePods really know their surroundings and put the sound where it's got to be. I'm amazed at that, and of course the far field microphone technology that they use.
It's insane.
I know. I'm like at the other end of my house. My HomePod's up in my bedroom, and I yell at. You don't have to yell at it. You just talk, and it just hey, I hear you.
She says,
Yeah, you can barely hear her.
I mean, I just discovered that the Wemo, which is the Belkin plug, I had sitting on my shelf in the box because it was Amazon. I was like, I don't want to deal with this. I want it to be a part of the Apple ecosystem. So I'm reading because they were selling them. They were on sale on Amazon and for like $21. I'm like, oh, that's cheap. And I said, oh, I already have on it, but it only works with Amazon. But no, sure enough, they had a firmware upgrade for it. Now it works with HomeKit. I'm like, oh, sweet. So I was able to hook up that to one of the lamps downstairs in my living room area, and then we have another one, which is the Eve Elgato device, that plug. to our Christmas tree. So all I have to do is ask her to on the HomePod to, hey, turn on my Christmas tree, and it freaks me out. I was like, this is great. Turns the Christmas tree on and off. I don't have to, and she hears me on the HomePod, so I don't have to scream into my iPhone in order for it to ask, hey, you to do it. So
that's very nice.
But yeah, I have not dabbled into much home automation, but there's a lot of stuff is on this market now that you can get involved with that. That's another topic. I should look for another episode to talk about with that. So.
Absolutely, you want to get someone who I had on iChart Radio, Richard Gunther. You should get him on the show. Yeah. He's the home automation guru.
Yeah, we'll have to hook me up with him. We'll see if he'll come on the show. So
absolutely.
But yeah, that's another great topic. So, but it sounds like you're. That's why I had you on the show, because you're the Apple guy like I am. So we love our Apple stuff, and even Mac as well. We love it all, and it's hard not to be immersed into it. So, good to hear. So now let's immerse yourself even more with another topic I know you would love, because you're a musician, and I wanted to see what you thought, or your thoughts were, with the music and iOS. Are you a subscriber to Apple Music?
I use Apple Music. Yes, I do.
You are. So you have the subscription, which I love it. I mean, I know what your thoughts are on it, but I think it's a great service.
I think it is good, especially if you use it a lot. It really it figures out what your tastes are. There's many times that I'll just ask my HomePod to play a station based on this one song,
right?
And the job that it does, and maybe if I'm home all day on a Saturday or something, and just the way it stays on track to that first song that you played, hours ago, really blows my mind.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's just very impressive. Like you said, it just knows your tastes and knows where to go, your favorites. It just amazes me. When they see a playlist that I've created, and then they say, "Oh, you like this playlist? Maybe you like this."
Yeah, exactly.
And the suggestions are pretty awesome.
Most of the time. Sometimes it tries to think you're going somewhere, like it thinks you picked that song for one reason, and then there's oftentimes I'll ask it to do what I just said, but then I'll have to skip ahead a couple times because it'll get too jazzy or too soft or whatever, and I'll have it skip a couple songs and then never go back to that very specific genre or whatever it was, So it can learn right on the spot by you just hitting the skip. Like, I don't want to hear that. Yeah,
no, I agree with you. And having the HomePod is even more of the beautiful thing, to being able to listen to music and being able to really enjoy it, not just necessarily on your iOS device. And you have both your iPad and your iPhone. So, what kinds of music do you like? You're the more rock kind of guy, or?
I don't like much rap. I don't like new country.
Okay.
But besides that, I can listen to pretty much anything. I'm in the mood for, anything else at any given time. But as far as what the music I grew up with was Motown and soul, and of course the classic rock stuff when that's first, when FM first started happening. That's how old I am.
Well, hey, we're not too far apart, my friend.
So I remember when FM first started coming out and you could hear stuff in stereo. It blew my mind, and we were listening to Yes and Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd.
Supertramp was my band. I like Supertramp.
Supertramp was another very well produced band out there that was very easy to listen to on a stereo set of headphones. That's for sure.
Put that Crime of the Century album on, I could just listen to the whole thing and just kick back.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
I have dabbled a little bit into the other services, like Spotify.
Me too, for sure.
And I mean, I wasn't hugely impressed with them. They have a nice app, and they interface it nicely. I believe you can. They've gotten better with the HomePod, where you can interface it, so you could get the music to play. Were you a subscriber? Because I'm not anymore. I was at one point, but
yeah. Well, again, living in Canada,
Oh, that's right. Why do I keep forgetting it? Your some of your limitations. That's
Right. So Spotify was available to me before Apple Music was. So
That's
Spotify came because Spotify was the king of streaming music. It still may be in terms of the number of subscribers they have, but I'm not exactly. I've lost track of that race. Right. But yeah, so I used Spotify for over a year, only because I had to, I guess. That was the only reason. And even then, I started after I got out of Spotify. I don't know, or maybe it's the other way around. I started using Google Music, which I also liked. Right. Because there was a period of time there where I was using two phones. I had a Nexus back in the day.
Oh yeah.
And so I was using
one of those.
Yeah, I thought they were decent phones for the time that they were around. So I was using their music service as well because it's pretty much interchangeable. There's as far as those Spotify, Google Music, and Apple Music, they pretty much have all the music, I want to say. Yeah. There's a couple other services out there that aren't like Amazon's offering.
Yeah, Amazon Prime, yeah.
They don't have every single artist, and there's songs on albums that you can't play every single song on the album for whatever. There's licensing reasons, right? So, but obviously, being in the Apple ecosystem myself, Apple Music is super easy. Like, just telling just in the middle, you just feel like you're in the mood for this kind of music. You say, I want to hear this one song because it's in my head and that's the kind of mood I'm in. I just blurt out a sentence and the next 4 hours are filled with music based on that.
There you go.
Just
on a lyric. Yeah. Just on a lyric, yeah. So I just put in the notes here. I forgot about that, because Apple just recently bought Shazam. I don't know if you've used that service or not with Apple Music, but it definitely was an interesting buy, and it kind of incorporates to what Siri really does. Is you were able to put your phone up to wherever song's playing, and it'll tell you what song's playing. So
right, I believe Apple was licensing the technology.
Right. Just
like they were licensing whatever dictation they were from Dragon software back in the day. Now that's all been totally melted into the operating system of everything, the macOS and iOS as well. So Shazam, very cool that you can just ask your phone, what song am I listening to? Or even ask HomePod if it's playing a song that you are digging that it just threw on. Say, what the heck is this?
What song is this?
Yeah.
And it's going to be incorporated because, if they haven't already integrated it, it's going to be there. But there's a separate app too that's been out. Gosh, I remember it. That was the first app I downloaded when I had my first iPhone. Shazam! This is so cool. I can listen to find out what song is playing.
Exactly, and I'm kind of curious why there's some apps that they bought that immediately after they bought it, they got rid of it, and then you never even saw hide or hair of it for maybe a year or whatever, and then all of a sudden you realize, they're using that one or two features within the operating system. Whereas Shazam, the app is still there,
right? So it is.
Whereas you can even from your lock screen, you can ask your phone what you're listening to.
Yep, and then the other service I've used is Pandora. And then, of course, Pandora just got purchased not too long ago by SiriusXM. They're going to merge. I guess more so SiriusXM is buying Pandora. They're always an interesting service. They had the free service that everybody would always take advantage of. Yeah, this deal listening to all the commercials all the time. But
sure.
Unfortunately, it was great that being a T-Mobile customer, they offered a free 1 year the Plus subscription, so I don't have to listen to those commercials. But it's going to be interesting to see where Pandora goes when it comes to the music because of SiriusXM and SiriusXM, which I know is big in Canada. Is got a great app themselves too. So I'm going to be curious to see where they merge all that with the iOS devices.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious too. I'm thinking that maybe the Pandora name may actually disappear at some point, and it's small compared to the other players, and it's small within SiriusXM's whole ecosystem. So I think that has the opportunity to possibly just get melted in as well.
We'll see what happens, but. That's kind of our take on music.
One thing I wanted to mention, though, was the Apple Music family plan. My brother, who is not quite as technologically savvy as me, let's say maybe 1/100th as me, you can have family members spread far and wide. They have to be in the same country, but you can give them, access to all the music in the world. So, it's $15 for me to have me and my wife and my son and my brother who lives out in British Columbia, who doesn't know anything, who still would play not albums, but cassettes and stuff. Like
he still plays cassettes.
Well, he has one in his car, so he would.
No way.
Yeah, so he keeps stuff.
That's great.
And eventually, I sent him like my old iPod, the best one they had, like the last version, and he would just continually just loop through all the music that was on there. But so once I gave him the choice of doing that, so he ended up buying an iPad. And he just plugs that into a stereo system, and he'll often text me, say, "I'm listening to this right now because of you, man. I really appreciate it. I would have never, gotten into this." And so, yeah, if you have less technologically savvy friends who are also into music, or who may be into music more than they are into technology, it's a great gift to give them. I mean, an extra $5, and you can give it to your immediate family as well as some other people who may appreciate it more than you can possibly even imagine.
The way I've been doing it is, in the States, it's $99 a year. You can buy the full year pass, and I just share it with my wife, and we just use the same account. So because she doesn't care as far as differences in music, she can listen to whatever she wants either way, but doesn't necessarily is concerned about customizing of it, because that's it. It might be a little more important for you as far as you having your own feed and your wife and your other family members.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Where I guess so far we haven't had that issue. So
the $99 will pay just for Apple ID to access
one Apple ID to access the music. But of course, if I'm listening to something at the same time as she is, then whichever one gets it first trumps it. So it is that's the only downfall to it. So if
you start listening to something and then your wife wants to listen to something, she can't, or how does that work?
I think it I don't know if it overrides it or not, or it actually, if the person who was playing first, it'll tell that other person, so well, it's in use right now.
Oh, okay.
And as soon as the music stops, then they could take over.
Because I remember with my Spotify account, I think it was the Spotify account, it would actually cut the other one off, assuming that you were running this on this device. Now you want to run it on this device, because it would assume that's just one person.
That's something I probably should try. See
just a little test, yeah.
Yeah, so let's see how crazy can you be here? But it's all device based, so only one device at a time, which makes sense.
Yep.
Any other things you think of music with your iOS devices at all?
Well, music in general, I have an app called Tabs.
Oh, okay.
Which there's a lot of songs that I don't necessarily play in my band, but I just play them here on my couch at a campfire in the summertime. Or so what I do is I will look for a tab of a song, and tabs are basically music charts that you can figure out the chords to songs. And the tabs has a free version and a pro.
It's called TABS?
TABS, yeah. And it's from the people who run the website called Ultimate Guitar Tabs.
Oh, okay.
So the app is called Tabs, and they're the king of this as far as iOS apps go. I'm assuming they have an Android version of it as well. And what you can do, it's amazing, because you can actually listen to the song as you look at not just tabs, which is just the chords. Okay, you're playing a G here and an F here and whatever. You can actually look at actual music notation as it's playing it, as it's playing the song. Now the song doesn't sound like the radio version or the version that's on the album. It's MIDI based, so it doesn't sound exactly, but you actually can hear what notes are playing or what chords are being played, and you get to pick whatever instrument you want to hear, whether it's the horns or the lead guitar player or the bass or whatever's making notes. Obviously you wouldn't want the drums in there, but so that's the Tabs app that allows you to do that. I don't use half of the features that are actually in the app. For the most part, I just want to know what the chords are to that Bruce Springsteen tune that I was playing at the campfire the other day.
There you go.
And you just go in there and you favorite whatever ones you want to favorite, and then they just show up in kind of like a library of your tabs. So that's one music thing that I use. Another one is called OmniTuner, which I play a ukulele and guitar. And with the OmniTuner app, you can pick your instrument, and it'll just show the strings of that instrument, and then you just tune it that way. Or you can also tune it based on frequency. If you really are tight about being exact, I think it goes to 2 decimal places as far as the tolerance of the tuning. Yeah. And what else? It does something else I'm not remembering, but that's another one that I use on a pretty regular basis.
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is the Apple did add to the Apple Music is the being able to search lyrics and being able to tell you what the song is based on that lyric. So they've really improved their search with lyrics in themselves. Have you tried that at all?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because obviously, I'm going to say about 80% of the songs that I listen to have the lyrics in the app as you're listening to it. So if you're wondering what they're saying, you can actually just scroll up or scroll down on the play, where you're actually looking at the song that you're playing on your iOS device, and then the lyrics are below there. Usually, not every song. So that's a huge database, right? As far as lyrics go, and it's simple, easy for them just to, if you're singing something, if you actually get the lyrics right, it can find whatever song that is. Sometimes it screws it up, but for the most part, it gets it right.
But we all love music, and that's what's great about this device. I mean,
we don't all love music, David. Allison Sheridan
does not. That's right. Allison, if you're listening, yes, I know you do not like music, and we've talked about that a number of times. I forgot. Not everybody in the world does.
It's anhedonia. I just wanted to throw it out there.
That's what it's called, right? Anhedonia. Yes. So, anyway, I thought this was a great topic to talk with you about, since we both are relatively passionate. But you are as much as I am passionate about music. So
Chicago's a great music city, that's for sure.
It really is, and the blues. They got a lot of blues here, and a lot of great music here, and it's amazing where all of our iOS devices have come from when going back when the iPod first came out. And,
sure, Apple's DNA is based in music. Yeah.
Just thinking back to that history of my first iPod.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Probably have one of those old ones laying around here somewhere.
Those weren't cheap either.
No, I mean the first iPod was what, $500?
$500.
Yeah, for a iPod that was what, 5 gigs that played what, 1,000 songs, if that.
Something like that, yeah.
I mean, FireWire, and it didn't work with, and it was still in its infancy, and it's. Boy, they've come a long way. Really.
Yeah, 5 gigs now. That's not even 5 songs because just based on the kilobits per second bit rate and all that kind of stuff that affects the size of songs. And the internet's much faster and storage is much more readily available nowadays.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that discussion, because we did, and music is awesome. So
it is.
Let's move on to a different topic here, and I talked about in the last episode about Google Fi. Google Fi is a great service, and they were only offering Google Fi on select Android devices, and specifically was on the Pixel and the Nexus and any of their phones, and then a few other model Android phones. Well, but they did announce last time we talked that they're offering the service on the iPhone now. In fact, I'm going to grab it here as I'm away from my mic.
Yes, you are.
I did that on purpose so everybody knew that I was going to grab this. They sent me a SIM. I wanted to check it out. So you could order a free SIM from them, from Google, and they will allow you to be able to put the SIM in a iPhone.
All right.
What doesn't work with iPhone. Limitations. There are some limitations involved. It'll affect the home iMessage thing. Where iMessage, once you went to Android and then you came back, and then you lost getting your iMessage messages, and you become the green bubble versus the blue bubble. So there are some limitations with it right now. So, but
they plan on making it messages compatible.
That's there hasn't been anything specific as of yet. You can go to the comparison chart, and then it'll tell you that there are some limitations. So,
All right.
only reason I bring up Google Fi is because that's what kind of turned me on to what's called eSIM. eSIM is an electronic version of a SIM, not those physical old style SIMs that we've been putting into our phones for years and years. So the technology is here. There had been some phones that had it, but now Apple did include it in the phones when they first came out, the 10R, the 10S, and 10S Max, but it wasn't enabled when it came out. So with this new version of iOS 12.1.1, the update did add eSIM support to all three of those phones, because the phones were ready to do that, just weren't ready as of yet for the software. So what I did is I put a link in the show notes to a support article from Apple on how to be able to use this as a dual SIM. Now think about that. Maybe there are some people out there that want to be able to have two separate phone lines on their phone. Call me crazy, but maybe you have a business line and you have a personal line. You want to keep them on one phone, because I see it all the time. I don't know if you've seen it. I'm sure you have.
Yes, I have.
Carrying around 3 and 4 and 5 phones sometimes, which is crazy. Oh, we know our best friend Barry Falk.
Right.
He carries every phone there is known out there. At least every iPhone there is out there, because he has to stay on top of it because of his job at being in mobility.
Right.
But this is going to be a kind of a game changer. Now you're going to be able to do dual SIM, which you'd have one carrier would be on eSIM and one carrier you can be on with the regular physical SIM. And it basically what an eSIM is, it's a digital SIM that allows you to activate a cellular plan from your carrier without having any physical nano SIM. And in a number of ways you can do it. It says you can use one number for business and one for personal calls. Like I said, maybe you want a local voice plan. Another great thing to think about. Maybe you want to keep your personal line, and you might be traveling overseas and you want to be able to use services when you're in a different country. So, I mean, when I say different country, outside of North America. So, because I think Canada and because most of the carriers nowadays, like I have T-Mobile, I get free coverage in Canada. So, so that there's some of the reasons why you'd want to do a dual SIM. Now you can set it up with your cellular plan by getting a QR code from the carrier. And the carrier would provide this QR code where you could scan it, and it would automatically start the setup process.
That's easy.
I've gone through it before on a Pixel, and the Pixel works awesome. And when Google Fi they did it with that, it just I couldn't believe it. It just automatic. So the only thing is right now it's very limited in at least in the U.S. As far as what carriers go. And let me look in Canada here. Actually, Canada, it says Bell. Is it Fido?
Yeah.
Fido.
That's
Fido.
a flanker brand. So the major carriers here each have.
Yeah, looks
main
everybody
brand.
has them. You've got 5 carriers that are already locked and loaded. Lucky Mobile, Rogers, and of course Rogers, the big one, right?
Yeah.
And Bell, of course, and Virgin. In the USA is right now AT&T has it. You can get it now, which I've abandoned AT&T because I just was not happy with them. So I'm with T-Mobile. Mm-hmm. It does say T-Mobile will have service later this year, which I would think it's the end of this year, and the end of this month coming up here.
Yes, I would assume so.
And Verizon, and so you got 3 of the big carriers in the U.S. That are going to be jumping on this, and there's a lot of other carriers around the world that have it. Surprisingly, United Kingdom only has 1 carrier in their EE. That's in the big country. So, but looks like North America is represented pretty well.
Pretty well, I would say, yeah.
For this, so being able to have the eSIM, the cool thing is you'll be able to label your plans. You'll be able to have different setups, and the setting is right into the cellular settings. So it's now all programmed into the phone. So it's super easy and super convenient too.
So when you go to switch back and forth from one SIM to the other SIM, virtual or not, does your phone have to get shut off and turned back on, or just
no? You decide which one you want to use,
and then it'll just show up in your title bar or at the top of your phone there. Yeah,
primary or secondary as far as which line you're going to use. So, and Apple's got quite a detail here, and if you even look in the control center, when you bring the control center down, it actually shows the 2 carriers listed and their strengths.
Well, there you go. Bam. So that's super easy.
So it's super easy. And you go into cellular data, you got primary, secondary. So I'm pretty stoked about this actually, because you never know. A lot of people may be out there who want to be able to do this. So
absolutely, especially traveling, I would have to think that's
I think that's the
when
biggest thing.
When I would be using it for sure. You go into another area of the world and you've got this extra phone line. You don't actually have to buy a cheap burner phone to
right.
Stay in contact. You can actually have your phone.
All those days that you had to have another phone with you to travel overseas, like whether it be in Europe or wherever across the world.
Yeah.
And there is even more. There's another link in the show notes and in the support article about doing dual SIM if you have an Apple Watch that's cellular, which I do not have, and I don't believe in. I think it's kind of overkill, honestly, because you have to pay extra for it. So. But no, I thought it was something that the listeners should know about, and I thought it was pretty cool
it's being activated in your operating system on your iOS device as of today.
It is as of today's release of 12.1.1.
Awesome.
So I wanted to touch just briefly a little bit on Siri shortcuts, and you and I had talked before the show about, and this was definitely a thing. Where are they really ready for prime time? And if anybody doesn't know what shortcuts are, is there were some automated shortcuts that people could create to make things easy on your iOS device. It originally was an app called Workflow. Workflow was owned by a completely different company that was bought by Apple not about a year ago, and they've now merged it and incorporated it into iOS. We have a link in the show notes that actually there was a shortcuts outage that is on 9 to 5 Mac, and there was an interim fix for that. Have you dabbled in the shortcuts at all?
I tried. Yeah, I actually tried to. I was pumped about it when iOS 12 came out. I thought this is something I could probably end up using, and it's like workflow. It's something that I honestly haven't wrapped my head around it.
Right.
I seem as though I need to be trained for about an hour or two by someone who really knows their stuff in this, and then I could go forward from there. But as far as just the consumer delving into shortcuts, it doesn't seem like. I think I'm a relatively tech savvy guy, and I couldn't really get anywhere with it in terms of something I could say, I want to put this with this and this, and I get this result. It comes with suggestions, which they're handy and nice to have, but those are shortcuts that are obviously already been put together. Whereas maybe I want something that's something specific to my own workflow, and I could see myself using it on my iPad specifically, but it's not there for me. That's why I asked you about it, because this is in touch with iOS, and I'm thinking iOS shortcuts. Maybe that David Ginsburg guy knows all about it, and he could teach me something, but that's not the case.
I do know a little bit of it. I mean, there is ways of creating these shortcuts very easily. But I'm the kind of guy with the shortcuts. I'd like to if I just go into the library, I dabble in some of these shortcuts already in your phone. Like shortening the URL. You want to do a Street View message or add an event or download your YouTube video. That's always the very handy app on your iPhone, because sometimes you want to download that video onto your phone and watch it later on, and not have to depend on the access to do it. I know the Apple Store app was just updated to check on orders and things like that. So you're going to start seeing a lot of different third-party developers that'll be able to go through and do that. So, like I said, there was an article about the shortcuts having some problems, and there are some instructions in there in that if you run into some problems with those specific shortcuts that you have created. I'll look to kind of dabble in this in another episode, and
awesome.
See if so we can come up with some good
information. I look very forward to that, Dave. One shortcut that I did that I was curious about was the ability to click on a link in a text or an email and not open up Safari, but open up an alternative browser.
I have not seen that shortcut.
It exists. So I went looking for that one, and it was Google. Obviously, they want you to use Chrome, of course. Yeah, and I do use Chrome. Do you? What do you use on a regular basis?
As far as I use Safari. I do have Firefox, and I have
You got them all, probably.
I got them all because I have lots of space. I can put all these.
Do you have
browsers.
Microsoft Edge?
I actually do have it on there.
Me too.
That was a whole nother discussion. that they're looking to revamp their Edge browser to Chromium, so they're pretty much going to build Edge on the Chrome platform, which was, I thought, very interesting.
Can't beat them, join them.
But that's a whole other topic.
Yes.
But yeah, I just wanted to dabble into that a little bit.
Okay.
As we're getting close to the end of the show here, I wanted to make sure we didn't forget any other tips or gear that you mentioned. I saw your gear, your app here that you mentioned. I wasn't able to find it or Google it, so tell us about it. It's called Audio Record Pro.
Audio Record Pro, yes. So I am going to be recording audio with some video. So I wanted the best program that I could just plug my microphone into, and just have it record everything that I record. And yet I want something that I can just have nearby and hit the stop or the pause button or whatever, and do different takes. And I don't want to have a learning curve that's too big. And I want this recording to be as long as I want it to be. That's oftentimes a limitation with some recording apps out there. You can only record for 59 minutes, some arbitrary amount of time. So this app does that, and the ability to play any kind of audio file you can imagine. And it also exports to multiple formats and allows you to put that audio file anywhere, SoundCloud, Dropbox, everything. It's all incorporated into this app, and the interface seems to be pretty cool.
And this is an iOS device, iOS app.
Yeah, well, my plan is to record the audio for my video thing that I'm going to have going onto my iPad via a lavalier microphone, and that's going to be my setup.
Okay, we'll have to get that in the show notes because I'll have to look in the App Store to find that, so everybody can see.
Yeah, I think if you look for it, it sends you to the App Store. There's just a link on a very mundane web page.
Okay, and is that for both iPhone and iPad, or just iPad?
Yeah, it's for both.
Okay, great. No,
yeah, it is great. I really like it a lot. It looks great on the iPad, so it's nice to be able to have multiple recordings and have a nice big list of stuff, and it allows you the naming thing. It's full featured. It definitely is a pro app.
Okay,
for sure.
We'll have to check it out.
And as far as a tip goes, do you want tips now? Or are you going to go?
Yeah, if you want to throw, I was going to do my. Let me do my pick here for this, and I don't know if you're familiar with this. It was an interesting concept, being able to put your Mac on an image on your iPad. And of course, they had They had an app called Duet Display, which I have dabbled in for many years, and I believe they're coming out with a new version of this too, similar because they had to compete. But because Duet Display, you had to use your Lightning cable, plug it into your Mac, to be able to project your Macs and use it as a dual screen. Well, this company is called Luna Display, and they have this amazing little hardware solution that's about the size of that's probably about the size of your thumbnail, and it plugs into one of your USB-C ports, and it turns any iPad into a true wireless second display for your Mac. And I just got it the other day, and I started playing with it a little bit, and this thing is pretty amazing. It really, you can have your display right on your iPad, and be able to have it in dual screen, be able to access it. Very, very cool way of doing it. Again, I got the link in the show notes. It's not that terribly expensive. It was like $79.99, and I thought it was a pretty cool thing. And then they do have versions for both the latest Macs as well as the older ones with the mini DisplayPort too.
So the Mac, from what I've read about this, the Mac recognizes it as a second display, whereas the other thing that was going on before was kind of like a little workaround, right? Right,
because it was kind of like what you hooking up your iPhone to,
right?
So you can display it on QuickTime. Duet Display would do it the same way, but they would image the Mac screen onto your iPad. But this is wireless, and that's what's key. So you can move your iPad around and not be locked to a wire. So
to get this straight, so you can mirror it and you can use it as a extended display, basically.
Correct. You can do both. Yeah. You can mirror it or extend it. So pretty slick stuff here.
Yeah, that's cool to have for sure. Another display always comes in handy in many different situations.
All right. If you say you have some tips, I'm welcome
tip,
to keep a couple in there. Or one tip. Okay, I'll make sure you put it in the show notes here. So go ahead, go for it. Let us know about it.
Oh, right. I didn't put in the show notes. Sorry about that. This is something that I just recently found out, and that's a cool thing about tips, right? You find them out and just pass them along. I did not know that with the latest version of the operating system, you are able to, you probably knew this, have an alternative appearance. So someone else's face can open up your phone.
Oh, yes. We did talk about it, but no, please. I'm glad you found it. Tell us.
So you just go into settings and Face ID and passcode. You got to obviously sign in, put in your code, and then somewhere in the middle of the screen there, it's going to say set up an alternative appearance. And you're going to give it to whoever you trust with the access. Your wife or your partner, whoever, and someone that who may not know or be able to remember your passcode in case something happens to you. You want to have them easily be able to get into your phone. Obviously, that's not for everybody, and there's people out there who have trust issues.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
but that was just something that I found cool. That I thought, well, that's going to be easy for my better half to get into my phone, so she doesn't always have to remember my passcode. Which I change. I'd like to change it up every once in a while, just for security's sake.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that was a great tip. I'm going to make sure that gets in the show notes and everybody's aware of it. So. Let me wrap up the show here, and we're going to find out a little bit more about you right at the end of this wrap-up and what you have coming as well. So, that's a wrap for this week. Please send your comments, questions, and suggestions to our email address at feedback@intouchwithios.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at intouchwithios. You can also subscribe to us in your favorite podcatcher. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, and even TuneIn Radio. Or better yet, go to our website, intouchwithios.com, where all the links are there that you can click to listen to us on our website. And I am Dave Ginsburg, and you can find me on Twitter at DaveG65. And I want to really thank my guest, Mike LaPlante here. And Mike, I'm going to give you an opportunity to plug away and tell us what your next endeavor is before we close up here.
As some people may or may not know, I was a podcast for a really long time, was really into the Apple tech scene, and
sure.
And it was great, but it has morphed into something that I don't feel the same passion about that I used to. And
that's why I'm here.
That's right. You got to hand the baton off. But another passion that I do have is wine.
Yes.
And we have a friend we talked about earlier, Barry Falk. He's also another big wine guy as well. And he's one of the many people who have inspired me to start a YouTube channel. So that's what I'm doing. I'm starting a YouTube channel. It's going to be called The Average Wine Enthusiast. And so I'm going to be taking you on my journey through what I've learned over the years of drinking lots of wine. And that's the only way you can learn about something is drinking lots of wine. So probably look for the first one around the beginning of the year.
Awesome.
The start of this has been delayed by a few personal things in my life, but
of course,
it happens. Yeah. So maybe sometime in January, I'll come up with the first one. I'm not exactly sure what the frequency of it will be. We'll see how good of a video editor I am, or maybe if I come into some money, I can pay somebody to do that.
Do you have the channel set up yet, or are you still working on that?
I do have it set up, but don't go there because there's nothing there. Nothing there.
Okay. We'll make sure we'll have at least the name of it in the show notes for you, so everybody will be aware of it. So when it comes time to check it out, you'll be able to check his new show out. I can't wait.
Can I come back on the show maybe later?
Of course you can, goof. All the times you had me on iChart Radio, I mean, that's the least I could do. No, but if anybody didn't know, Mike did host iChart Radio, and I really want to thank him he really inspired me even more with this podcast by being on his show every 6 weeks, and had a blast, and got to meet all my friends and all the folks that you're getting to listen to with guests here. So,
yep.
And in fact, I can tell you who my guest is going to be for next week. I've already lined it up. It's going to be Mr. Frederick Van Johnson, who's from This Week in Photo. So he'll be on the show next week. So I just wanted to give that heads up to everybody as well. So,
can't wait. He's awesome. He knows a lot about taking photos. That's
So we're gonna have an episode on nothing but iOS photography. I think I'll have no problems filling an hour of that.
No problem at all.
And then some with Frederick. So we're looking forward to it. So. With that, I thank you for listening. Please stay subscribed, and thanks for listening.